Stalky Boy back with another video within your walls, and welcome back to our monthly news recap and Halloween talk, or welcome to the first time for the upcoming Halloween the Game. This is a series that I wanted to do twice a month, one video going over the news and another covering some fun speculative sort of video, but this month's information regarding the game hasn't been a ton, so we're combining it into one big sandwich. Normally I have the news recap at the end of the month, but I'm flying out of state by the end of the week next week, which means Ilphonic, if you're listening, you're not allowed to reveal anything crazy until October. It's the rules. Anyways, let's first go into what they have revealed for the month of September. We really got two things shown. An interview with Nick Castle and a few shots of Nick Castle doing some mocap, one of which does show us some pretty neat little tidbits. The biggest thing revealed in the interview with Castle is the other individual doing the more physical, tough stuff as the Shapes mocap. This individual is TJ Storm. TJ Storm has a very, very large resume, both in the gaming and movie world. Stuff like Godzilla, MCU projects, Tekken, Street Fighter, so much more. He's played a wide variety of characters, and I have no doubt he can pull the shape off. Nick is also giving TJ pointers, and from the interview, Castle praises TJ both for his performance and how willing he is to take feedback. All good signs. I have no doubt he'll do a great job, and I'm very excited to see their combined performance for Michael. Most of the interview are some fun little questions, but don't reveal too much about the game. If you'd like to read it for yourself, it'll be linked below. Now, the two screenshots shown for Castle doing the mocap, both of which are definitely not shots from the film, so both contain new material. The first is a stabbing motion. It's probably a stab animation. The closest thing I could think of regarding the movie was either when he points the knife while walking to Laurie in the kitchen, or at the Wallace house when he's pointing the knife when he climbs up the stairs and, the kids are with Laurie Strode in the hallway, in the Doyle house right before the final confrontation between him and Laurie. I would say it looks more similar to the Wallace house, but he's holding the knife in the wrong hand, but technically he does switch the knife back to his right towards the end bit. That's what I was reminded of the most with this little pointy knife image. The second image is Castle with the rope. This is cool for a few reasons. The biggest being, we know Myers steals some rope in the original film, but we never actually see him use it. He swings Bob's corpse with it, but this image shows him actively holding it and getting ready to strangle whoever's in front of him with it. For starters, it's cool to actually see the Shape using this rope, but this also means that we're going to be able to use other weapons to some degree. Now, I find it hard to believe that a strand of rope is going to be a weapon that you can just always carry with you. I believe the rope will be an environmental kill. We also have a man's body in a window in the teaser trailer. We have things pointing. We have quite a few things pointing that environmental kills are going to be in the game. I could be wrong, but it's hard for me to see this rope being used in any other way. Maybe a cool, unique kill for the story, but I still think it would be an environmental within the story, which is supposed to teach you the mechanics of Myers in the multiplayer. Environmental kills are looking pretty likely. And that's really about it for the month of September. Well, kind of. There's still one more week of September, but as I've said, I won't be around for that little bit. Nothing big, Ilphonic. I'll be watching. I think they have bigger things planned for October, which is why they're pretty quiet for most of September, which would make sense because we're dealing with the Halloween franchise here. Anything else that's revealed, unless it's huge, in which case it will be covered ASAP. Other than that, it'll be covered in October's new recap. Now, on to the main discussion of the video, that being the main things I want to see from Halloween the Game. This list isn't particularly ordered, except for the last two things. I would say those are what I want to see the most from the game. And while I want a ton of things out of this game, I'm going to keep it to just 5. Otherwise, this video will just be an hour of Halloween the Game discussion. Something I would love to do, but I know I'm obsessed to the point that I have a problem. The first thing on my list is a unique soundtrack for the game. Now, this mostly comes from a content creator's point of view, but as a fan, it would also be really cool to see, especially since John is back on board for the game. It would be really cool to see more Halloween music from him in that 78 magic. We got a bit of that in Kills with the flashback scene, and it just made me all warm and fuzzy inside. Of course, if they make their own OST for the game, then us content creators won't have to suffer from copyright claims for every video as well. Think Dead by Daylight's The Shape Stalks. That is never copyrighted because that's Dead by Daylight's own variation of that theme. I'm not really worried about this. They've had an option to turn off copyrighted music since Friday the 13th, so I know we'll be well taken care of. I would also love to see new takes on tracks from sequel movies if they're eventually added. It would all just help the game come together to feel like a celebration of the Halloween franchise. Speaking of sequels, next up on my list are, of course, the Halloween sequels, being included eventually. There are a ton of sequels that are loved by the Halloween fandom. I mean, like, there's a following for nearly every single one. Even the strangest of the bunch, such as the second Rob Zombie's Halloween, has its own set of fans. And I want to see as many sequels represented as possible. That probably is the most obvious thing I've ever said. Yes, the Halloween fan wants to see more Halloween. But this also has to do with the health of the game as well. There's only so much you can go off from the original film before it gets milk dry. That being said, I would absolutely lose my marbles if Ilphonic is permitted to make their own sequel content, like their own original takes on a sequel to Halloween, and add that as a story campaign with their own unique, never-before-seen variations of the shape. Oh, it just makes my little shape heart beat a little bit faster thinking of completely new stories for the game. We know we're getting some new storylines that fill in the blanks of content that was off-screen in the 78 film, but if they can give us completely new storylines, that would be really cool. I'm getting sidetracked. Let me get back on the rails here. Now, in terms of sequel content, I would say the one I want to see the most would be Kills. Can you imagine playing as Myers through the Halloween Kills campaign? That would be incredible. Kills in general has so much it can bring to the table between its hospital, unique Myers house, mixed bar, and a ridiculous amount of characters. Tommy Doyle, Lindsay, Marion, Sheriff Brackett, Allison Cameron, Lonnie. Please let me play as Lonnie. I loved him in Kills. As the title suggests, it has some of the best kills in the franchise, an amazing soundtrack. If Myers has Unkillable as his chase music, my life will have peaked. Tons of memorable Myers moments, which would make for a great Myers campaign since it's from his perspective. A great selection of locations for a map, and my favorite Myers design. You could also include the flashback scene for content. There is just so much you could do with this movie for the game. But I eventually want to see just about every sequel in the game. The ones I want to see the most would be Halloween 2, 4, 6, H20, 2018 Kills, and Ends. Ends is an interesting choice since it would give us the unique Corey killer. Similar to Roy in Friday the 13th, he could offer some variety that isn't just Myers. Another cool thing they could do is give us an alternate timeline Jamie Lloyd, one that commits to the ending of Halloween 4 and has her actually turn evil. Give us a full-on adult Jamie. Her and Corey, I think, would be enough for variety. It'd be awesome to get a co-op campaign for Halloween Ends, Myers and Corey joining forces and slashing the streets of Haddonfield. It probably wouldn't be co-op, but man, that would be awesome. Next up is a way to mold our characters, a nice in-depth progressive system, something to really motivate us to keep playing the game, especially on launch for Michael's side. I think some sort of way to change up how he plays, whether that's perks, a skill tree, something is needed to change him up, because there's going to be the only playable villain at the start, unless they throw a curveball at us, but I highly doubt it. They're very focused on the original for the beginning of the game's life cycle, and I think it's very important there's a way to make the shapes different from one another, so it's not the same every time. Unless DLC is planned on being added quickly, I think this is imperative to the replay value of the game. This, of course, also includes customization options for both sides. I don't want to see anything crazy with the shape, but some different blood patterns, Bob Goshi could be fun, an escape patient look, something to spice him up cosmetically. The second to last thing, so one of the things that I want a little bit more than the rest of the options is a role queue. I've always disliked having to play a side when I don't feel like playing that side, especially when it comes to content creation. If I'm trying to record a Myers video, I don't want to have to fight people in order to get him. I also just find it more interesting to get a completely different lobby with different people rather than face the same people over and over again. I think Halloween is a big enough license that it can handle a roll queue and pull in a large amount of people. I have heard a few arguments against roll queue, such as, well, if you don't have a roll queue, the queues themselves are faster, which sounds good, until you realize you have way more people disconnecting because they didn't get Michael Myers. Yes, there will be longer queues, but you can add queue incentives. Higher amounts of points, as seen in Dead by Daylight, could help alleviate this problem. And who doesn't like extra points? Also, unlike something like Killer Clowns and Friday the 13th, which needed a 7+ player count bare minimum, you could start a match in Friday the 13th with less, but I don't think that would exactly be encouraged. Halloween only needs 5, something that'll make lobbies much smoother. Once again, DBD does it, and the only times the queues really struggle are when new game modes are added and when they introduce a new character. A game not having a roll queue is the single biggest turnoff for me. Since in an ASIM, the two sides play incredibly differently. They're essentially two different games, so when I want to play Hero, I want to get Hero. When I want to play Myers, I'd like to play Myers. Some people say, well, if you want to play Myers, go play the single player mode. I'm not always going to want to be playing single player. Sometimes I want to play the multiplayer with real people, not bots, as Michael Myers. Once again, going back to the content creation, I already know ahead of time when I'm streaming the game, people aren't going to be interested in me playing Hero, or at least not as interested. They're going to want to see the Dead by Daylight Myers main play Myers in Halloween the game. It would make the experience much smoother, at least for me, and I think a lot of other people can agree that when they play the game, they have a specific role in mind that they want to play. Less people DCing, people actually get to play what they want. If I have to wait an extra 3 minutes for the role I want, I'm happy with that. Rather than possibly rotating in matches for 30 minutes plus just to get Myers one time. The thing I want to see the most above all else is single player content supported beyond launch. I would like to see any future DLCs bring in sequels to also include campaigns for those individual sequels. Now, I know that would mean the DLC process would slow down a bit, but I think it would be beyond worth it. You could even just release the DLC in parts, such as every 3 months, something gets released. So you'd get the multiplayer DLC in January for Halloween 2. Just as an example, and then 3 months later, you'd get the campaign for Halloween 2. You could potentially bring in 2 new sequels per year with this and still have a consistent DLC drop, which I think is very important. I believe that's one of the biggest reasons Dead by Daylight is successful over every single other ASIM, because it continues to drop substantial updates every 3 months. Now, it doesn't need to be exactly 3 months. If they could do at least 2 huge updates every half year, I think that would be perfectly fine with small things sprinkled in between. But I really want to see this game succeed, and having a consistent supply of worthwhile content is how you keep these games afloat. An idea that was shared in the Halloween Discord that I absolutely cannot take credit for goes to my buddy Leek. Allowing the players to make user-generated content, making their own storylines with text bubbles that allow players to just make tons and tons of scenarios for single-player enjoyers to play through. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero did something like this. You could allow players to set up win conditions and create their own storylines that other players would want to follow. What does Myers do from kills to ends? Express your own ideas and have players live through your fan fictions. This would increase the replayability of single player a ton and keep our single player friends playing the game. I don't think this is actually going to be added, but I wanted to express it in case maybe someone from Ilphonic does happen to see this. Perhaps it could spark an idea for the future. Maybe not for this in particular, but maybe it could spiral into something else for single player content. I'm not really sure. Maybe it would be cool to have the campaigns, and then maybe later down the line, you could just have small little single-player challenges similar to Friday the 13th, the game. I really want the single player in this game to be really fleshed out, because one day, the servers will shut down. That's just going to happen. We saw it happen with Friday the 13th, the game, and you just can't play the game anymore. Well, I should specify you can't play the multiplayer anymore. You can still play it in offline mode and play the single player challenges, so there still is a way to play that game along with just playing the normal multiplayer offline against bots. So it won't like completely die. There's still a way to play the game. It's not a very robust way, and it does get a little repetitive, which is why I would like this game's single player to be quite a bit bigger. And it having a story mode already is a really great step in the right direction. And I should say, I do think that the campaign is going to be substantial. I mean, like, they have a completely different team working on this, along with hiring a writer. We'll be talking more about what we can expect from the single player in a later video, so subscribe to see that. I would imagine it's at least 4 to 5 hours based off of Polar Studios' other game, Karma. I don't think the single player is going to be puny. I think there will be some meat to it. They've even mentioned collectibles and being able to influence the 78 campaign. That already increases replayability right there. But, you know, the more single player, the better. Those are the things I want to see in the Halloween the game. What is it you want to see? Let me know in the comments below.